I think making pasta is one of the most calming and meditated processes that I do. I learned to make pasta when I was about 8 years old. My grandmother taught me one egg at a time. Once I mastered one egg, I graduated to two, then three, and eventually five eggs, which is kind of my standard recipe these days. We didn't own a pasta machine. We rolled the dough with a sanded and finished broomstick, and we had a special knife that was used only for pasta. It was very sharp. We suspended the broomstick between two chairs to dry the noodles. And looking back, I realized that my grandmother wasn't just teaching me pasta. She was teaching me patience and technique and respect for ingredients and maybe most of all, respect for time. Today, we are going to separate the myths from the traditions and discover why pasta has remained one of the world's greatest foods for centuries. Is pasta really of Italian origin? Well, probably not originally. There's evidence that, well, there are stories that Marco Polo brought it back, but there is evidence that it was actually in Italy before he came back from China. We're talking about the 1200s here. So it's really hard to tell where it came from, but it does seem like maybe the first pasta was actually in China, and somehow it made its way into Italy and other parts of the world. And if you think about it, many cultures have some type of pasta. Spätzle or gnocchi is even considered a pasta, which is something I grew up with. So many cultures developed it independently, but Italy took it really to heart because to date there are probably over 600 different types of pasta made in Italy. And each region has their own type and their own shapes, and they have a lot of fun with it. For example, the tortellini is based on the navel of Venus. And if you think about it, it really does look like a navel. And they just love making all these different shapes. There are whimsical ones like farfalle, which is a butterfly shape. And I'm teaching a class coming up in hand-shaped pasta. It is such a fun thing to work on. And when you really, really master it and make all those shapes look exactly the same, it is so rewarding. And it's really fun to play with the fillings as well. So pasta became a regional identity for each of these many little portions of Italy. Now, in my part of Italy, which is northern Italy, and I call it my part of Italy, although I certainly didn't grow up there. My grandparents did, both in northern Italy, in towns that were actually about 5 kilometers apart from each other, and they did not meet in Italy. They met here in America because they both came to America around the same time. Anyway, that part of Italy is, they do pasta there, and that is divine. But really, what they grew up on, what my grandmother grew up on, was a polenta. And at that point in time, there was a depression going on in Italy, and polenta was very inexpensive. But know this, pasta, even when you use the very expensive flours that I use today for it because they have to be imported from Italy. We'll talk about that later, but it's still a very inexpensive dish to make. And some pasta, of course, is made with eggs and some pasta is not made with eggs. So we have that thing going on as well too. When I teach classes, I really, really love to talk about all these different shapes, and the real reason behind it is that all of these different shapes of pasta hold sauce differently. You use one for one type of dish and one for another type of dish, and you don't mix them up because a very delicate pasta would hold a very delicate sauce, and a more hearty sauce would be on something like a pappardelle, which is typically a thicker and wider noodle. So you have to think about where that sauce is going to be landing and how it's going to be received by that noodle when you make your decision on what to put together with. I'll give you an example on that. In my restaurant, I developed a signature dish based on the Amalfi Coast, a lemon pasta sauce. And the differentiating factor in this sauce was that instead of using Parmesan, which is typical, I used Asiago cheese because I love it, for one thing. Not that I don't love Parmesan, but I really love Asiago because it was one of the things that came from Italy when I was growing up that was so special. So I use Asiago cheese, but I use it primarily because it melts really beautifully, and Parmesan still maintains a slight grit when it melts, which I found a little off-putting in this pasta. So this wonderful sauce, I first paired with angel hair pasta, which is very thin, a kind of capellini, very light, thin, and the sauce is held, just lightly grips onto this noodle, and it melts in your mouth, literally melts in your mouth. So that became my signature dish. Over time, I tried it with fettuccine, and I began to realize that it just does not work as well as it does with just angel hair. It just is perfect with angel hair. So the other thing I learned, I'll just throw this in as an aside, pasta is meant as a course. Some pastas don't mix well with proteins, and it's not really typical to do the Olive Garden thing where it's like, would you like your pasta with chicken? Would you like some shrimp? They don't really do that. So, but at the restaurant, I was asked to do that all the time. And every single time I would say, okay, fine, put some chicken on it, it would come back and be like, well, this dish just isn't as good. So that's why there are so many types of pastas, because every little thing matters, and that's how I feel about cooking. Everything matters. So the Midwest, bringing us back to the fact that this is called Midwest meets Mediterranean, the Midwest has really, I think, taken those European and Asian culture noodles and any culture noodles and brought them here, replicating them and making them their own, which is a great thing. So dumplings, spätzle, certainly egg noodles, the pasta I make in my classes, gnocchi, which is considered a pasta. So different cultures doing the same type of thing, bringing their pasta into their cultures, and we all love it and make it. And let's not forget about that American staple mac and cheese. Now, I don't know what the particular origin of mac and cheese is, and I didn't research it because it just popped into my head. But I suspect it's, essentially based on a cheddar cheese tossed with pasta. And no, cheddar is not Italian. It is English, I believe. Yes, cheddar. But how they decided to toss pasta and cheese, I mean, that's been done. So what they did is they made it super convenient in a packet, and you add a bunch of butter, and it is arguably really delicious. Probably not very good for you, but I did live on it for a very long time when I was in college. So 4 for $1, well, you can't beat that, right? So I'm just getting back to why Midwest meets Mediterranean fits into this, because pasta is in our culture, and many people have pasta every week or every day. And I find the only issue with that is probably the portion size. Why has pasta become a Mediterranean staple? Well, there are probably a lot of reasons for that. One is that it's just a good base for a meal, kind of something that holds its shape well, holds sauce well. It's also made typically with durum wheat in Europe, and durum wheat is high in protein and a very lovely, sophisticated flour. It has a long shelf life. It transports easily. It's affordable. It has become, because of all of those reasons, a pantry staple. So it also mixes well with olive oil. It loves tomatoes and seasonal vegetables. Seafood goes well with it. Cheese obviously goes very well with it. So Mediterranean food really isn't complicated. It's just simple ingredients prepared very thoughtfully, and pasta is oftentimes the base of that. Now I want to talk about something that comes up all the time: fresh pasta versus dry pasta, as if they are in some sort of battle with each other because one is better than the other. But that is really missing the point, because they are different from each other. One is not better. They have different purposes. They have different textures. Again, they have different sauces. They hold sauce differently. And just because a pasta is a dried, manufactured pasta does not mean it doesn't belong belong in the kitchen because it's inferior, that the only pasta that belongs in your kitchen is the pasta that you make on a Saturday afternoon and eat Saturday night, let alone the fact that you're probably going to dry the rest of it and eat it the next day. But the point being that dried manufactured pasta is lesser, and it's not. It's just has a different purpose, as I said. And if you buy a good quality, and by good quality, I mean made with, again, a really good quality wheat. In Italy, that's going to be a durum wheat, which is a softer wheat than American wheat. So very digestible. Oftentimes people have pasta made with fat flour and also semolina from durum wheat, and they don't, if they have gluten issues, those don't appear because of the quality of the flour, and also they don't have any additives, so no preservatives. Brass die cut pasta is considered very good to whole sauces because it has a roughness to it that makes the sauce cling to it, which is a lovely quality. And it can be on the expensive side. You're going to pay more for a really good quality pasta, but still, it's less than meat, and it does have protein. So now, talking about that fresh versus dried pasta, by the way, so we never called the pasta we made fresh pasta. We almost never, well, actually, we never cooked it that I can recall right after it was made. We always dried it after we made it, and then we cooked it. So the first time I cooked it right after I made it, I was pretty sure the whole thing was just going to turn into a large glob, which it did not at all. It wasn't called fresh pasta. It was just pasta. We dried it first, but you don't have to. We always mixed it by hand, rolled it by hand, did the whole broomstick thing. And now I've got sophisticated equipment that I absolutely love. Don't think my grandmother would love it, but I can make pasta really quickly. I love that. It's such a set aside time thing. I can just kick it out and have it right away if I want to, which is wonderful. One thing I wanted to bring up too is that pasta is a part of a meal. The Mediterranean diet is not based on pasta, and I think people really think that that is the truth because that's where pasta comes from, so that's all they eat, and that's just not true. It is a small portion, usually served, I would say no more than 3 or 4 ounces of pasta as its own course, as its respectful own course, and it's never overdone. But there are vegetables and fruits and lean proteins and all sorts of other things, including extra virgin olive oil, herbs, and moderate portions that make up the Mediterranean diet. So to that point, I feel that pasta certainly can be a part of a healthy diet if you know what you're doing with it and you build a beautiful plate with it and make it from scratch if you want to, or buy good quality and you enjoy it with the people that you love. So that all begs the question, if pasta has been nourishing families for literally centuries, why do so many people think it's unhealthy? This episode is brought to you by Bonicelli Cooking Club, home of the Mindful Mediterranean program. If you're looking for simple, seasonal recipes, practical cooking strategies, and a more joyful way to approach food, you will find it here. Visit BonicelliCookingClub.com to learn more. Is pasta unhealthy? Well, pasta's become a kind of a scapegoat, I think, for unhealthy habits. So carbohydrates in general have been blamed for decades for weight gain, and if you eat too many carbs, can be a problem. That's the problem, not the pasta itself. So pasta in and of itself is incredibly simple, and we need to keep it as a simple element within a healthy diet, but not as the diet. And we need to evaluate the entire meal and how all of those elements of the meal relate to each other. And remember that portion size matters. So for me, I still eat pasta. I do not eat pasta every day. I consider it to be a luxury item, and I do it well when I do it, but I watch the portion control all the time. And there's another reason for that, not just I know that if you eat too much of anything, you can gain weight, especially carbohydrates, and especially something that's so good. But I really watch the portion controls, and if I'm going to do it, I do it exactly the way I want to. And if I really want to have a larger plate, then I usually will do something like spiralized zucchini in it, or do flat leaf zucchini, or some other type of squash. Spaghetti squash is great to kind of stretch it out and make it part of the dish. So that's one way, if I really want more, that I do that. But I just try to make sure that I'm always mindful of the fact that that's what I'm eating, and I want it to be a part of my life and diet, but I don't overdo it. So the Olive Garden size portions just shouldn't be happening. And as I said, if I want a little more, then I just fill it in with vegetables, and it makes the pasta even that more special. The other thing is that I feel that oftentimes it's not the pasta in and of itself, it's what goes with the pasta. The American Alfredo sauce, which is a pretty heavy, creamy sauce, not a typical thing to do in Italy. Alfredo is really an American thing. And I'm not saying that cheese on pasta is unusual in Italy. It's just a really heavy cream sauce is not what they usually do. If there is a cream sauce, like my lemon pasta is a cream sauce with butter, but it lightly coats the pasta. It's not doused in it. So we'll talk more about how you do that in a little while, but that's just an atypical thing from an Italian perspective, and it's a big thing here in America. The portions, again, huge restaurant-style portions are part of the problem. You just can't eat that much of it, and it needs to be something that's, maybe 3 to 4 ounces as a serving. That is reasonable, and that's how much you should have. Also, American pasta and flours have additives, and oftentimes are not of a high quality wheat, and they have processed ingredients. So you need to read those labels and make sure that you're buying good quality pasta. And there are some things that come out of Italy that aren't necessarily high quality, so you have to read those labels as well. Just know that the Italian government has standards in place, the Europeans do, to make sure that the flour is classified and it's monitored, so you know that it doesn't have extra ingredients in it. And if they say it has the wheat, it has the DOP insignia on it, it means that you are getting quality, and that's what you need. Here's another point of cooking pasta properly. Now, you need to salt your water. Now, when I make pasta at home, I do not put salt in the pasta itself. And so no salt added into the pasta dough, because my opinion of it is the first time that you are actually going to flavor the pasta is when you salt the water. And that's one of the reasons that you salt the water. The other reason that you salt the water is, and you do this after the water is boiling. And by boiling, I mean full on boil. I'm not talking about a simmer, full on boil. Then you throw in a handful of salt. You can measure it if you want to, I never do. But you throw in a handful of salt, kosher salt is what I use, and it raises the temperature of the water slightly and evens the boil. So it cooks your pasta better. So that's the reason for salting the water. Now, the Italians would say they want you to have the water taste like the sea. So that's pretty salty, right? So you have to consider that when you're thinking about your sauce, that you're going to be adding salt as it boils in that water. And then you're going to add the sauce. So you have to think about that when you choose your sauce, to not oversalt your sauce. You can always add salt in, but you can never take it out. So just consider those two things as you're doing it. And here's another point. You never add oil to the water. And I saw this a lot when I was growing up. As a matter of fact, I believe my mother did it, because she lived in fear of the noodles all sticking together. So if you put oil in the water, they won't stick together. But guess what? They never stick together. So you don't have to add oil to the water. But there's a problem with doing it, and that is that when you take it out and you try to sauce it, you've got a layer of oil, and it's going to resist having the sauce integrate with the pasta. And it can be, depending on the amount of oil, rather greasy. So you don't put oil in the water. But the one technique I wanted to share And this is if you have to hold pasta. This is how we did it in the restaurant. And if I'm entertaining, I always do this. I cook my pasta ahead of time to al dente. And by al dente, that means literally means to the tooth, which means don't overcook it. It has better texture, better flavor. I always know what my cooking time is, and I start tasting 1 minute before to make sure that I'm not overcooking the pasta. So I do that in the morning. And then I toss it in extra virgin olive oil while it's still hot after I drain it. Extra virgin olive oil, spread it out, cool it down completely, and then by portion I bag it. So I'm holding it. Put it in the fridge once it's completely cool. Don't bag it while it's hot. Let it cool. It's covered in oil, so it will be fine. And then you bag it and put it in the fridge. Then when you are ready to serve, you have your pot of boiling water. You take your portion, put it in a strainer or a chinoise, what we usually use, which is a kind of cone-shaped strainer, and we dunk it in the water for 5 to 10 seconds, stir it around, take it out, and it's done. It's perfectly cooked. It took 30 seconds to get it out of the bag, into the water, and out, and you're ready to sauce it. And you have perfectly cooked pasta that you did not have to watch. You didn't have to sit over a boiling pot wondering if it's done properly, having wine, and then forget, and then it's all overcooked. You don't have to deal with that if you do it this way. That is the only time I use oil in and of itself. And the oil, by the way, when you dip it in, all comes off in the water, so you don't have that problem of it resisting sauce because you just got rid of it in the boiling water. Another point that often comes up is rinsing pasta. You don't rinse pasta, ever, because you want the starch, and the starch, it causes the adhesion that you need for the sauce to cling to the pasta noodles. So no oil, no rinsing, and the only exception to that is, now I'm going to give you an exception. If you're doing a pasta salad and you're going to do a vinaigrette, that's kind of a different thing. So, and you want them to be cool and separate. So then I would rinse it in cold water to stop the cooking process, and you're going to do a different thing. You're not trying to really meld your vinaigrette with your pasta salad or your mayo or whatever you're using. So that would be the only exception to rinsing that I would have. And make sure that you save your pasta water. Pasta water is liquid gold. What I do is I don't save the entire pot, although sometimes I just move it to the back of the stove so I have it handy. What I do typically is I'll take some of it if I need the space, I'll put a mug nearby, save a cup of it, because I won't need more than that. And then after my pasta is done cooking, or I've dipped it if I was holding it, and then I sauce it. So I don't put it on a platter and put sauce on top. I have usually not an entire, like a full spaghetti sauce pot, but I'll have a saute pan, high-sided saute pan, and I'll have some sauce in there, enough to cover my pasta. Once I drain the pasta, pull it out of the water, either with tongs or a strainer out of the water. I don't dump it in the sink. I take it out of the water on the stove and put it into the sauce. And then I add just a little bit of that pasta water to help emulsify the sauce and help the sauce cling to the pasta. It's a beautiful way to do it, and one of the reasons that you shouldn't drain your pasta over the sink, so that you can have that pasta water handy to finish your pasta. So the last thing I'll say is that you really need to think about the sauce first. So you want to do a sauce, and I think we always go the other way around. I want to make tortellini. What am I going to do with it? But I've learned to start thinking about, okay, I want to make this sauce. I want to do a pesto cream sauce. What's the best pasta that I can make to go with that? And then go from there. You have all these choices. You have tubes. You have long pasta. You have short pasta. You have tiny soup pasta. You have pacari, which is this kind of huge tube. You have things you can stuff. It's just a beautiful world. So what you need to do, I think, is think about the sauce first and then choose the pasta. Now let's pull all of this together into things that you can do tonight that will immediately improve every pasta dish you make. This episode is brought to you by Bonicelli Cooking Club, home of the Mindful Mediterranean program. If you're looking for simple seasonal recipes, practical cooking strategies, and a more joyful way to approach food, you will find it here. Visit BonicelliCookingClub.com to learn more. You want to cook pasta like an Italian, so how are you going to do that? Well, first things first, buy good pasta or make your own. But if you're going to make your own, buy good ingredients, because in cooking, there really is no making a silk purse out of sow's ear. You have to buy good ingredients, start there, and then on top of that, you can use good recipes. But if you don't buy good ingredients, you're just not going to get a truly good dish out of it. So what are good ingredients? If you're buying dried pasta, consider bronze cut, consider imported, or look for someone doing it locally that really does a good job. Look at the type of flour used. Durum wheat semolina is a good place to start. 00 flour, good place to start. Slow dried. It's really truly worth spending another buck to get a really good quality product on your plate. So another thing is fresh pasta will always have a special place in my heart. And why? Because I have to make it myself, which I love. It reminds me of my grandmother. It is in my family, and I believe in many people's families, a family tradition. It is something that you can do together. Children love it, especially not like me making it by hand. I loved it eventually, but it was pretty hard. But the machines they have now that were invented in the 40s, so they're not really all that new, and they haven't changed that much, but they're really fun. They're like Play-Doh Fun Factory fun. So it's a great way to involve your children, and again, you can cook it fresh, so you can make it and have your sauce ready and cook it and have dinner right there and then. I always buy farm fresh eggs if I can get them. Good quality organic eggs, really important. I use a recipe that is exactly measured in grams, so I get a very consistent product out of that. I use 00 flour. I use Caputo brand out of Italy, so it's got the DOP designation, and I know the quality is very, very good, and there are no additives. For the semolina, I use King Arthur semolina. I like the texture of that better than I like the Caputo. I think it makes a beautiful, beautiful product, and it is, again, no additives, and so that is what I use. Other things, let the sauce finish the job. So you want to remember to slightly undercook or cook your pasta to al dente, which means to the tooth. So it should not be soggy or overcooked in any way, because it will just not be satisfying. And if you do accidentally do that, if you have extra pasta, start over. Remember to finish your pasta in the sauce. So the sauce does not go on top of the pasta. The pasta goes in the sauce. And then you toss continuously and add a little pasta water to thin it. And actually, because of the starch, it won't thin it a lot. It will actually thicken it and have it adhere really, really nicely. Remember to finish with really good quality ingredients. So that drizzle of good quality, amazing olive oil will change everything. Good cheese, Parmesan, Asiago, buy the best. Fresh herbs. I think people just forget that herbs are just so uplifting, and you can use many more of them or a combination than you may think. Right now here in Minnesota, we have herbs everywhere. It's fantastic. So don't count those out. And another little trick, even if it seems inappropriate, is a little lemon zest can really, really perk up any pasta dish and give it a little unexpected elevation because of the acid in it. So how do we manage pasta in the Mindful Mediterranean program and build a really good Mediterranean plate while we still have those carbs? Well, I don't look at the pasta as the center of the meal. If I serve it as a course, it's a small portion of the meal. And if I'm putting it on a plate, I keep it to, just visually, a quarter to a third of the plate, not the plate. I use seasonal, colorful ingredients. I mentioned before, I spiralize zucchini. I add in oftentimes I roast peppers, I roast fennel, all kinds of things that I can toss with the pasta or have on the side of the pasta. I don't usually put these in the pasta, although once in a while, but beans, lentils, seafood. These are the other parts of the meal. A moderate amount of cheese. Those kinds of things are how you build out that plate, making the pasta a special part of something that's really special instead of the main course. Here's another way of looking at it. If your plate is mostly pasta, add vegetables. If your plate is mostly vegetables, add a little pasta. So here is my pasta confession list. These are the things that, in spite of being told not to do them, I have done over the years. And for the most part, I have stopped. Overcooking pasta. Now, sometimes when you buy European pasta, Italian pasta, the translation might not be completely right. So I, again, always start testing early so that I can make sure that I don't overcook the pasta. I have forgotten to salt the water. And you notice that because that just little bit of background salt that comes with the pasta really informs the sauce. And that's one thing I didn't bring up. I also under salt so that I can use a little bit of finishing salt. My go-to salt is Malden sea salt, but I have a drawer full of different salts that I love to use. So I under salt so that I can finish with a crunchy finishing salt. I love that. Don't add oil to your water. I have done it. Not a good idea. It really changes the outcome in a not great way. Rinsing your pasta, oftentimes it's hard to get that water out because if you're rinsing it, you're adding water in, and if it's cold, then it really doesn't come out, and then when you add the sauce, you've got soup. So don't rinse your pasta. Let the starch work from the pasta water. That's what it's there for. And don't dump your pasta water out. I used to do that all the time until I realized that it was actually a great asset to keep on hand. So to wrap this up, I have to say that maybe the biggest reason I started teaching pasta classes was because I wanted to spread the word and have more people experience how wonderful making pasta is. And I literally do not only talk about my grandmother every time I make pasta, but I think about her in such a dear way because we just made pasta so humbly with our broomstick, and I'm so blessed to have such great equipment and so many resources now. But her pasta looked machine cut. That's how good she was at it. And I was so privileged to have her teach me not really Italian cooking. What she was teaching me was how her family always cooked. She came to America when she was 18 years old. So her knowledge was compacted into those 18 years, and she shared it with me, and that's why I want people to share it with their families. So the lessons that I had with my grandmother shaped me as a chef. It is what I come from. Food connects generations and cultures and traditions, and I experienced something that goes all the way back to the Italian village that my grandmother grew up in. So for me, that was the beginning of when the Midwest met the Mediterranean. So the best pasta you'll ever make isn't the most complicated. It's the one you make with really good ingredients, very good technique, and the people that you love to share it with.